you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. About 6 months ago, I was invited to a conference where a moderator on a panel session asked me what Soho Hospitality was doing with our data. I stumbled for a few seconds, and then foolishly or courageously, I said, we actually have no clue what we're doing with our data at all. About a few weeks later, I was at a hospitality conference where a global CEO of one of the largest hotel groups in the world was asked the same question. What was this hotel conglomerate doing with its data? Surprisingly, his answer was not dissimilar from mine. He said, we have no clue what we're doing with our data. These two compelling events were a catalyst for me to delve deeper into understanding the technology platforms across my organization, as well as the data sources. I immediately dropped everything I did, set up a task force within my organization in order to go and address some of these data challenges. This began my journey into restaurant revenue management, which is what I'm here to share with you today. At Soho Hospitality, we run 6 lifestyle restaurant brands and 1 QSR brand with 7 outlets. At a time in which data is the new currency, we had huge challenges in terms of understanding our data effectively. As we looked further into our data challenges, these were some of the obstacles impacting our business. Our customer data was often duplicated, incomplete, and inconsistent. We had no clue of any data about server performance across all of our restaurants. We had no real-time access to any analytics in order to derive business intelligence. Reporting was fragmented and manual. Key information was missing. Operational teams were also time poor, spending a lot of their times on the shop floor attending to customer expectations. And at a time in which operating margins were under pressure, we did not have the luxury of hiring business analysts. We were not maximizing the capabilities of any of our technology platforms. We simply did not know who our customers were. Looking at data integration, we mapped out our technology platforms and data sources. And when we looked at our accounting application, inventory, marketing, or the POS, one thing was clear. All of these systems had separate data silos. None of them were speaking to one another. As a first step to solving these challenges, we enhanced the customer experience through the integration of our POS system and our table management system. This was a simple integration, but the results were massive. We were able to get a 360-degree view of the customer journey. We now had access to the customer spending, number of visits, and we were able to tag customer preferences in terms of dietary restrictions. But most of all, this data integration gave us visibility across all of Soho Hospitality's restaurants in terms of spending data at the individual restaurant level, but also at the group level. We also promoted one of our resources to become a 7 rooms champion so that they could take over the ownership of this entire initiative, as well as implemented training across all of our restaurants. The one thing I've learned is that restaurants, as well as Soho Hospitality, do not have any idea what to do when it comes to pricing. Herman Simon, the chairman and founder of Simon Kucher & Partners, the largest pricing consultancy in the world, said that most brands make 2 mistakes when it comes to pricing. We either price too high or we price too low. Pricing is ultimately based on the perceived value of goods and services, and restaurants actually do not have an idea in terms of what are the intrinsic value of the products in which they sell. Pricing doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very simple. Simply raise your prices up, and it trickles right down to the bottom line. A simple strategy or a simple trick we employed is at one of our Italian restaurants, Cantina, where I instructed our teams to reverse the prices of our food menu and wine lists from most expensive to least. This simple trick resulted in a 6% increase in food revenues and a 12% increase in wine sales. A more complicated or controversial aspect of pricing is demand-based pricing or surge pricing, something you've probably seen at Uber or Amazon. We decided to increase the price of our pizza slices by 10% in tourist-centric Soho pizza locations during high peak hours, and that resulted in a 10% increase in overall revenues across all of our outlets. Menu engineering is not new, but few restaurants are actually have an active menu engineering program. At Soho Hospitality, we're regularly assessing each of our menu items across all of our restaurants so that we can look at data in terms of popularity and profitability. But the one thing we're seeing for sure is that menus are getting shorter and shorter. As restaurants are being constrained because of their operating margins, they're being forced to reduce menu sizes in order to reduce inventory costs, holding costs, and eventually lowering food costs by 1% to 2%. But the one thing that we've seen is there's a limited amount of knowledge in terms of the psychological impact of menu design on consumer behavior. We need to look more at how we can correlate the way we design our menus in terms of driving profitability. In terms of restaurant distribution, if you ever go to a hotel GM and talk to them about rooms distribution, they'll spend an enormous amount of time telling you what their revenue distribution is for their rooms. But if you ever ask them to look at the same revenue distribution for their restaurants, you'll get pretty much a blank stare. At Soho Hospitality, we do weekly reviews of our revenue distribution to really understand and track the revenue sources, and we also benchmark our restaurants against one another so that we can identify trends and gaps. Post-pandemic, we came up with this bet that corporate events would move away from hotels into restaurants, and what we did is we transformed our restaurants into hybrid spaces that were more suitable towards corporate events. That resulted in an 8% increase in our overall restaurant revenues from corporate groups and events. In terms of table management and seat optimization, restaurants really do not have an understanding of table and seat management analytics. They're not looking closely at group sizes, dining timing per table, seating preferences. Most restaurants, including ours in the past, we had a static strategy, one size fits all, but that doesn't really work anymore. Proposed strategies for improvement include implementing software and algorithms that can provide real-time table management, looking at revenue-generating strategies to optimize turn times, and looking at what configurations at what times can drive the highest yield at what times of the day. At our 38-seater Japanese restaurant called Yankee, we noticed that the 4 tables were spending a lot more money than the 2 tables during high peak hours. So what we did was we decided to limit the 2 table configurations to earlier in the evening and then moving to more 4 table configurations as the evening went on. And that resulted in a 10% increase at that particular restaurant. The future of restaurant revenue is very, very bright, even though we're very much at the nascent stages. But there are several headwinds in terms of technology adoption and consumer psychological barriers that we need to overcome. Most recently, Wendy's announced that they've partnered with a company that was going to provide surge-based pricing for their burgers, and that did not sit well. There was a huge uproar in the United States and a lot of backlash from consumers not wanting to see their burgers have to go through any type of surge pricing. There's also new AI tools such as Eat Labs, which use pixelated cameras to look at kitchen operations in order to drive efficiency. There are also emerging players in the industry, such as Juicer, which recently raised $5.3 million in funding, a revenue management technology company, and they also signed a deal with Pizza Hut to basically look at their revenue management improvements that could be made in the United States. I hope that some of the learnings that we uncovered here serve as a catalyst for hotel operators and restaurant operators to look closely into restaurant revenue management so that they can learn to drive greater yield to their restaurant's bottom line. Thank you very much.